In 2012, inside a quiet dorm at the University of North Carolina, a night that began with laughter slowly unfolded into one of the most disturbing mysteries the campus had ever seen. A young woman sensed she was being watched long before anyone believed her. Faith Hedges began her day like countless others, walking through the warm-lit corridors of her dorm, carrying her notes and the determined calm of a dedicated student. Across campus, the morning sun touched the brick pathways as she studied with her close friend, Karina, exchanging soft jokes and moments of comfort that made university life feel stable and predictable. Later, Faith settled into the quiet refuge of the library. The soft rustling of pages, the gentle glow of desk lamps, and the peaceful isolation wrapped around her as she reviewed her notes, unaware that the night ahead would shift everything. By evening, she and Karina joined the lively energy outside a student club. Music spilled into the street, neon lights flickered across the pavement, and laughter carried into the night. For a moment, everything felt carefree. But when they returned to the dorm, something had changed. The building seemed unusually still, the kind of silence that didn't soothe but unsettled. Faith felt it immediately, a subtle pressure in the air, a quiet tension she couldn't explain. After Karina fell asleep, Faith continued to study, but the uneasiness kept tugging at her thoughts. She stepped into the hallway, hoping to clear her mind, but the deeper the silence became, the more her instincts tightened. The dorm didn't just feel empty, it felt aware. She walked to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, and stood for a moment in the humming fluorescent light, trying to shake the uncomfortable feeling. But it followed her back to the room, like a shadow she couldn't escape. Even Karina stirred, sensing something off. Later that night, a faint sound drifted through the hallway. Small, but wrong. She froze, listening closely. The sound came again. She stepped outside. The hallway stretched long and quiet until her eyes adjusted to the darkness. At the far end, a silhouette, motionless, watching. A cold wave of fear surged through her. She hurried to the elevator, her hands shaking as she pressed the button. Just before the doors closed, she saw the figure still standing perfectly still, as if waiting. Floor after floor, the unease followed her. Each corridor looked unfamiliar, every shadow sharper than the last. Her mind raced, but her instincts were louder. Something was wrong. She rushed down the stairwell into the lobby, hoping someone would be awake. But the building was empty, filled only with the low hum of lights and the echo of her own breathing. She stepped outside, the night air hitting her sharply, grounding her for a moment. Minutes later, Karina emerged from the dorm entrance, finding Faith pale, trembling, and unable to fully explain what she had seen. Together they returned inside, whispering urgently, trying to make sense of the strange presence that seemed to move within the dormitory walls. Back in their room, the tension did not fade. It lingered in the corners, pressed softly against the windows, and settled into the silence between their sentences. Somewhere in the building, something moved, quiet, patient, watching. The night had started like any other, but Faith felt the truth deep inside. This was only the beginning. As the night went on, the tension in the dorm room kept growing. Faith sat on the floor beside her bed, trying to calm her breathing, but the unease wouldn't leave her. Even the soft lamplight felt too dim, too weak to push away the fear tightening in her chest. Karina stood quietly by the window, staring into the darkness outside. Neither of them spoke, but both understood something was wrong, deeply wrong. Faith picked up her phone with shaking hands, and Karina moved closer, hoping for answers, but none came. The silence in the building felt heavier than ever. When Faith opened the door just enough to look into the hallway, her heart froze. At the far end stood the same dark silhouette, unmoving, watching. She shut the door instantly, panic surging. Karina tried calling for help, but no one answered. The hallways, usually full of late-night noise, were now completely silent. Minutes passed slowly. Every sound in the dorm room seemed amplified. A distant creak, a faint hum, the soft vibration of Faith's breath. On the flickering security feed, the shadow appeared again, slightly closer, never fully visible. Faith backed away from the door, terrified. Karina paced the room, checking the lock again, even though she knew it was still secure. Fear wrapped tightly around them. Faith curled into a corner with a blanket, eyes wide and trembling. Karina stood beside her, phone pressed to her ear, hoping someone would pick up. And in the hallway, something shifted. Not loud, just enough to remind them they were not alone. Karina stepped away from the window, shaken by something she thought she saw outside. Faith covered her mouth, desperate not to make a sound. Whatever was moving in that building was getting closer. As the hours slipped deeper into the night, fear settled into the small dorm room like a living presence. Faith stood frozen by the door, unable to decide whether to check the hallway again or stay where she felt marginally safer. Her breath trembled, her thoughts racing. Through the peephole, the silhouette appeared once more, closer now, motionless, silent, as if waiting for the right moment to move. Faith stumbled back in panic, and Karina rushed to her, phone still in hand, desperate for anyone to answer her calls. The building remained silent. The shadow in the hallway seemed to drift unpredictably, caught only in fleeting glimpses, always near, yet never fully seen. Every new moment felt heavier than the last. Faith tried to calm herself, but her body shook uncontrollably. Karina checked the windows, the doors, the corners of the room, searching for any sign of danger or escape. Her fear was growing too, a fear she could no longer hide. Together, the two girls tried to gather their thoughts, whispering urgently, clinging to any sense of control. But each time Faith pressed her ear to the door, she felt it. A presence on the other side. Something breathing in the same silence they were trapped in. The security camera footage showed the silhouette again, slowly making its way up the stairs, step by step, as if drawn toward their floor. Nothing about the figure felt human, only deliberate, patient, and terrifyingly quiet. Faith gasped and stepped away from the door. Karina backed away from the window, startled by something she thought she saw in the dark outside. Panic tightened around both of them, threatening to break their last bit of composure. They tried calling again. Still, no answer. Faith's heartbeat pounded in her ears. Karina paced the room, hands trembling, tears brimming in her eyes. They felt trapped, suspended in dread, unsure if leaving the room would save them or doom them. But the worst part was knowing the truth neither dared to say aloud. The silhouette wasn't wandering the dorm. It was coming for them. As the night thickened, the girls' room seemed to shrink around them. A sudden thud echoed from the hallway, and Faith froze in place, her breath catching in her throat. Something, or someone, was definitely out there. Karina crouched by the door, staring in horror as a shadow slid across the narrow strip of light beneath it. She covered her mouth with trembling fingers, afraid that even the sound of her breathing might give them away. When Faith turned toward her, she noticed something chilling on the floor, a faint smear, as if someone had dragged their fingers across the dust just outside. Nothing about it felt accidental. In the hallway, the silhouette leaned closer to their door, its shadow stretching unnaturally far. The metal handle twitched, moving only a few millimeters, but enough to send a jolt of terror through Faith. She stumbled back, knocking a book from the table. It hit the floor with a sharp crack, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. Karina reacted instantly, lunging to switch off the lamp, plunging the room into a deeper, more suffocating darkness. Faith trembled, clutching her blanket, while Karina raised her phone to call for help again. But the line filled with strange static, as if something was interfering with the signal. Meanwhile, the figure outside approached the security camera. The feed glitched, then refocused, showing it a step closer than before. Faith crept to the window. The campus lights flickered, one by one, as though something was moving beneath them. Behind her, Karina noticed a new detail: a damp, smeared handprint on their door, fresh. Fear wrapped around them like a tightening rope. The silhouette stopped directly outside their room. A heavy, deliberate palm pressed against the door, making it quiver in its frame. They were no longer imagining it. The danger was real, and it was standing inches away. As the night deepened, the dorm room seemed to tighten around Faith and Karina. The lights flickered without warning, as if something or someone was disturbing the building's power. A scratching noise echoed from the hallway, sharp enough to freeze them where they stood. Karina knelt by the door, only to jerk back when a shadow glided across the strip of light beneath it. Faith watched, terrified, as a strange smear appeared near the threshold, like a fingerprint dragged across the floor. Outside, the silhouette leaned close, pressing its hands against the door. The handle twitched, then stopped. The silence that followed was somehow even more terrifying. A book fell from Faith's desk, echoing far too loudly in the darkness. Karina rushed to switch off the lamp, plunging the room into a trembling half-light. They clung to what little calm they had left. The silhouette in the hall vanished from view. Moments later, the security camera down the corridor flickered, catching the figure as it moved swiftly toward the stairwell. But the tension didn't lift. Faith and Karina sensed the danger wasn't gone, only shifting. Then suddenly, the quiet broke. A distant door slammed somewhere below them. Faith held her breath. Karina moved to the window, where flashing red and blue lights finally pierced the darkness. Police had arrived. Through the hallways, officers swept with flashlights, finding fresh, wet footprints and marks along the walls. The silhouette fled down a different stairwell just moments before they reached the girls' floor. Faith and Karina stayed together, shaking, as an officer knocked gently on their door. It was finally over, at least for the night. As dawn broke over the campus, the building stood eerily quiet. Police cars lined the parking lot, and investigators collected every trace the intruder left behind. Later that morning, a small memorial table appeared near the entrance of the dorm. Candles, flowers, and a soft portrait of Faith. A quiet tribute to a life full of light, and a place shadowed by the events of the night. And though the sun finally rose, the memory of what happened in those dark hours would never fade. Sometimes the most dangerous person is the one you once trusted. He ignored the warning signs. He opened the door anyway. And within hours, everything would change forever. This is a true story. As morning light filled his home, Travis Alexander moved through his day with quiet focus, unaware of the darkness approaching him. But everything shifted the moment his phone lit up with the familiar name, Jody. He hesitated, feeling the tension rise, before finally answering. The call left him uneasy, and soon another message appeared. "We need to talk." By evening, a sudden knock echoed through his home. When Travis opened the door, Jody stood there, calm, composed, and entirely unexpected. He tried to hide his discomforts, but his face revealed hesitation as he let her inside. In the kitchen, the silence between them felt heavy. Jody watched him with an unblinking, almost calculating stare, her emotions flickering from coldness to sudden tears, and then back to unsettling stillness. Travis tried to remain gentle, offering kindness despite the tension building around them, but her behavior only grew stranger. Without warning, she reached out and grabbed his hand, too tightly, too deliberately. Startled, Travis pulled away, confusion and alarm spreading across his face. Then, with a soft, unsettling calm, Jody asked him to show her the bathroom. Travis paused, unsure why she wanted to see it again. But he agreed, not knowing he was walking toward the last place he would ever be seen alive. Travis walked down the dim hallway, glancing back as Jody followed him in silence. Something about her presence felt heavier now, colder. When they reached the bathroom, he hesitated, but she offered a soft smile, insisting everything was fine. Inside, Jody moved with unsettling precision, studying the room as if memorizing every detail. Travis tried to break the tension with an awkward smile, but her eyes were already elsewhere, colder, focused, calculating. She picked up his camera, claiming she wanted a few pictures for fun. He agreed, though unease lingered in his posture. Under the harsh white light of the bathroom, Travis stepped into the shower while Jody photographed him. His smile was forced, nervous, while hers faded into something almost expressionless. Behind the camera, her eyes sharpened, her mind drifting somewhere far from innocence. Then, while Travis washed his hair, unaware, she reached toward her bag, her face shifting into something darker. A decision had already been made. Moments later, he turned, sensing movements behind him. The camera hit the floor. Chaos followed, blurred shapes, frantic shadows, muffled motion. When the struggle stopped, the room fell strangely quiet. Water still ran, steam filled the air, and Jody stood motionless, catching her breath. She wiped the blade with the towel, her hands trembling only slightly. Then she grabbed the damaged camera, carried it to the laundry room, and dumped it into the washing machine with the clothes. As the cycle started, she walked toward the door, her face calm again, empty, emotionless. Outside, the night was silent. Inside, the truth was sealed behind a closed door, waiting to be discovered. Travis's friends arrived at the house just after sunset, expecting to find him getting ready for the evening. But the moment they stepped onto the porch, something felt wrong. The lights inside were dim, no music, no movement, only silence. They rang the doorbell again and again, calling his name, their voices echoing through the quiet neighborhood. When no one answered, one of them peered through the window and froze. The house looked untouched, but something in the air felt disturbingly still. When they pushed the front door, it opened with ease. Inside, the darkness wrapped around them like a warning. Water could be heard dripping somewhere in the distance. Their phone flashlights cut through the shadows as they walked deeper into the hallway. And then one of them saw it, a trail of water leading toward the bathroom. Panic erupted. One friend bolted outside, calling 911 with trembling hands. Moments later, flashing lights painted the house in red and blue. Officers stepped inside, sealing off the scene. And then Detective Taylor arrived, calm, precise, and fully focused. She slipped on gloves and entered the home with a single goal: find the truth. Inside, every detail seemed wrong. She followed the water to the bathroom, studying every mark, every shadow. Her breath caught when she opened the washing machine and found a damaged camera hidden beneath wet clothes. She lifted it carefully, staring at the cracked lens, knowing instantly this was no accident. Back in the living room, she placed the camera into an evidence bag, her expression tightening. Something dark had happened here, and she could feel the weight of it pressing through the walls. Later, in her office, the recovered photos finally appeared on her desk, blurred, haunting images that made her step back in shock. Piece by piece, she began building the board of evidence, realizing that whatever happened that night was far more sinister than anyone first imagined. In the quiet of her office, Detective Taylor studied the damaged photos recovered from Travis's camera. The images were blurred, distorted, but something about them felt important. She leaned closer, noticing the faint outline of a hand, delicate, with a distinct manicure. It wasn't Travis's hand, and it wasn't a stranger's. She printed the images, laying them out carefully, each one revealing a little more than the last. When she showed them to the forensic technician, he could only confirm what she already sensed. Someone else had been inside that bathroom, someone who didn't want to be seen. Back at her desk, Taylor pinned the photos onto the evidence board. As she stepped back, the patterns slowly began to form. A woman's presence, a familiar shape, a deliberate attempt to hide something. She picked up one photo, the one with the clearest view of the mystery hand, and examined it with a magnifier. A chill ran through her. The manicure, the nail shape, it looked intentional, recognizable. Taylor made call after call, speaking to Travis's friends, gathering details. And then, during one interview, everything shifted. His friend mentioned the name that had been hanging in the air from the very beginning, Jody. Jealous, unpredictable, obsessed. Taylor listened without blinking, every word confirming her growing fear. She returned to her office, grabbed another photo of Jody from the database, and placed it beside the recovered image. The match was unmistakable. She stepped back from the board, exhaling slowly. The truth was staring right at her. Jody wasn't just connected to Travis. She had been there, in the house, at the time he died. Taylor grabbed her phone, issuing rapid orders. Officers gathered around as she briefed them, her tone sharp and unwavering. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was a lead. Moments later, she walked out of the department and headed to her car, carrying the entire weight of the case with her. She now knew exactly who she needed to find, and she understood one thing clearly. The killer wasn't running from the truth. She had been trying to erase it. Detective Taylor drove through the quiet night, the weight of the case pressing heavier with every mile. Travis's photos had revealed more than anyone expected, and now she was heading straight toward the one person whose name kept resurfacing. When she arrived at Jody's house, the neighborhood was still, almost too peaceful. Taylor knocked on the door, and after a moment, Jody appeared, calm, polite, and strangely composed, as if she had been rehearsing this moment. Inside, the house felt warm, almost inviting, but nothing about Jody's behavior matched the setting. She smiled too much. Her voice wavered. Her eyes moved just a bit too quickly. Taylor studied her carefully, every gesture, every pause. And the more Jody spoke, the clearer it became. Her story didn't quite fit. When Taylor showed her one of the blurred photos from the recovered camera, Jody froze for a fraction of a second, just long enough for the truth to slip through her mask. She laughed nervously, tried to redirect the conversation, tried to appear relaxed, but her trembling hands betrayed her. Taylor made notes quietly, observing more than she asked. There was something in Jody's smile, something sharp, something frightened, something hiding. As the conversation ended, Taylor stepped toward the door. Before leaving, she glanced back and saw Jody's expression change entirely. The smile was gone. Her face had fallen into a cold, empty stare. Outside, the night air felt heavier. Taylor walked toward her car, certain of one thing. Jody was lying. And not just about where she had been, but about everything. She started the engine, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. This wasn't just another lead, it was the turning point. Taylor knew exactly what she had to do next. The search for the truth had officially begun. Detective Taylor sat alone in her car, reviewing her notes. Every detail of Jody's behavior replayed in her mind. The trembling hands, the shifting stories, the fear behind her smile. Something about it all felt painfully familiar and dangerously wrong. Back at the lab, a forensic expert handed Taylor a newly restored photograph. The moment she looked at it, her breath caught. There, in the blurry frame, was the shadow of a face she had seen only hours earlier. She placed the photo among the other evidence. Piece by piece, the entire picture began to form, and every thread pointed back to one person, Jody. Taylor gathered the team, outlining everything they now knew: the timeline, the recovered images, the lies. And then she made the decision. It was time to bring Jody in. Inside the interrogation room, the air felt heavy. Jody walked in with a soft smile, the same smile she'd used on everyone who ever doubted her. But Taylor didn't move. She simply watched. As the questions grew sharper, Jody's confidence began to crack. Her voice trembled, her eyes darted. Every excuse contradicted the one before. Then, Taylor slid a single photograph across the table, the restored image from the shower. Jody froze. Her face drained of color. Tears followed, dramatic, uncontrolled, but Taylor recognized the pattern. This wasn't grief, this was fear. Taylor revealed the final set of evidence: timelines, witness statements, digital records. There was nowhere left to hide. Finally, Jody broke. Her shoulders collapsed, and the mask she had worn for so long fell away. Officers entered the room, placing her in handcuffs as she kept her eyes fixed on the floor. Taylor watched silently, the weight of the case settling over her. Hours later, as dawn painted the sky in pale colors, Taylor stepped outside the precinct, exhausted but certain she had done what needed to be done. The next morning, newspaper headlines announced the arrest. And in her office, Detective Taylor closed the final folder of the case, bringing an end to a story built on obsession and a truth that could no longer be hidden. The house on Ocean Avenue has a long and unsettling history, and everyone who has ever tried to call it home has felt it. A presence inside the walls, something that breathes, watches, waits. This story is not a fantasy. It comes from real testimonies of those who barely escaped its grip. When George and Kathy Letts first saw the house, it looked like the perfect place for a fresh start. The sunlit facade revealed no cracks. The grass was greener than the neighbors, and the windows, shaped like eyes, seemed to smile at them with a warm, inviting glow. But that was just the mask. The moment they stepped through the front door, the house greeted them with a heavy, icy breath of darkness. Kathy paused at the staircase. For a split second, she thought someone was standing on the landing above. A shadow? So quick, the mind barely registers it, yet long enough to know it was there. At first, everything could be explained. A long hallway where silence felt too alive. Flies in the middle of winter? Impossible, yet undeniably real. Blue flames flickering inside the fireplace. The cold that no amount of heat could remove. And those small events, neither of them wanted to say out loud. A basement door knocking from the inside. A kitchen table sliding across the floor by itself. cabinets thrown open as if invisible hands were rummaging through them. Kathy constantly felt watched, as though unseen eyes followed her from room to room. And George began waking up at exactly 3:15 a.m., the very hour when blood once soaked the floors of this home. They didn't know it yet, but these weren't harmless coincidences. These were warnings. And what waited for them next was far, far worse. The longer the Lutz family stayed in the house, the clearer it became. Something inside was watching them. Kathy began noticing impossible things. Deep claw-like scratches across the floor, doors slamming shut by themselves, and stains forming faces on the walls. Even the old DeFeo family photos seemed to change, as if the past was trying to return. George felt the atmosphere growing heavier. Every sound echoed wrong. Every shadow seemed to move. When Father Frank arrived to bless the home, the house reacted instantly. Holy water evaporated on the doorway. The air froze, and the shadows twisted unnaturally along the walls. Upstairs, the priest found the room filled with dead flies. As he began to pray, the light went out. A voice whispered into his ear, "Get out." Red marks burned into his palms, and in the corner, a dark figure stood silently, watching him. Trying not to panic, he hurried downstairs. George felt a wave of dizziness, as if something deep in the house was pulling at him. At the door, the priest warned them, "Do not go into one of the rooms." But as he tried to leave, the doorknob scorched his hand, and his car radio crackled with a chilling message. "He is ours." Kathy watched him speed away, and from the attic above them came a sharp, slow scratching, as if something had just awakened. The house was no longer hiding. It was showing itself, clearly, boldly, and without mercy. George stared into the fogged bathroom mirror when a face appeared behind him, a face that didn't belong to anyone alive. Kathy found barefoot tracks leading across her bedroom floor, as if someone had been standing beside her while she slept. Downstairs, the refrigerator door opened on its own, breathing out a low, unnatural hum. At 3:15 a.m., George woke again, this time to the sound of a child laughing somewhere in the dark. When he reached the kitchen, every chair stood upside down, perfectly aligned, as if arranged by invisible hands. Kathy saw a childlike shadow dash behind a cabinet. George felt whispers clawing into his mind, voices telling him to stay, to surrender, to give in. The door to the basement swung open, releasing a cold, damp breath from the darkness below. A human-shaped silhouette waited in the red glow of the basement hall. Upstairs, candles burst into towering flames. Scratches grew across the walls under Kathy's fingertips, as though something inside the plaster was alive. Old photographs twisted, smiling faces turning darker, more aware. On the attic beams, heavy footsteps echoed, though no one was there. The hall light flickered violently, then went still. Shadows moved without their owners. The walls felt warm, breathing. George spun around, hearing a rasp behind him. Nothing. In the children's room, the windows slammed open, curtains lifting up as if pulled upward by unseen hands. On the fogged glass, a message slowly appeared. "We live here." By the fireplace, George stared into the unnatural blue flames, entranced. A whisper arose from the fire. "Finish it." Kathy reached for him. He shoved her away, eyes dark and empty. His shadow lagged behind him, moving on its own. and in the hallway, a new silhouette appeared. A man holding a gun, just like the murderer who once lived here. The house wasn't just remembering its past, it was repeating itself. The house was beginning to reveal its darker intentions. Kathy stood in the hallway staring into the mirror when a shadow passed behind her, slow, deliberate, human in shape. But when she turned, the hallway was empty. George found a fresh carving in the kitchen table, a single word etched deep into the wood: stay. Moments later, a heavy armchair slid violently between them, pushed by a force neither of them could see. Their fear was no longer silent, it was real, loud, undeniable. Kathy opened a hallway closet and found old children's toys inside, dusty, forgotten, and definitely not theirs. George, in the bathroom, watched a clump of long black hair slither down the drain, as if something alive was pulling it. The house shook the attic door, banging it again and again like something trapped inside. Strange symbols formed across the wooden floorboards, wet and glistening, pulsing with a life of their own. George heard whispering calling his name from the darkness. Kathy's reflection in the mirror twisted into something demonic, smiling back at her with a face that wasn't her own. The air grew colder, their breath visible as if winter had entered the walls. Desperate, Kathy called the priest. When he arrived, the weight inside the house shifted, recognizing him. As he began to pray, the walls groaned under an invisible pressure. The cross in his hand grew burning hot, too hot to hold. Then, as if struck by an unseen force, the door slammed shut between him and the Lutz family, locking him inside a dark room. George pounded on the door, shouting, but it wouldn't move. Kathy froze when she saw a tall shadow glide behind him, vanishing into the corridor. Inside the sealed room, the priest watched a message crawl across the wall in red. "He is mine." A cold breath touched the back of his neck. He turned, no one was there. Moments later, the door slowly creaked open. The room was empty. The priest was gone. George felt the voices growing stronger now, sharper, commanding. A dark figure appeared in the hallway, holding a gun, its silhouette eerily resembling Ronald DeFeo. The past was returning, and it wanted to repeat itself. As the figure approached, Kathy grabbed George's arm and yanked him back. The vision evaporated, but on the floor remained a dark, wet stain, a reminder of the blood that once soaked this house. Kathy pressed her ear to the wall when a slow, heavy knocking echoed from inside it, too deliberate to be the house settling. When the plaster crumbled underneath her hand, she and George slid a cabinet aside and uncovered a hidden opening. Behind it lay a small red room, glowing faintly, as if lit from the inside by something breathing. On the floor was an occult symbol, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. As George leaned closer, an invisible force yanked him forward. He staggered back just as a whisper rose from the darkness, a whisper that sounded exactly like his own voice calling him. Kathy froze when she saw his shadow stretch forward independently, reaching out toward her. The floor vibrated beneath them, the walls tightening with pressure. Then the entire house convulsed. Doors slammed, windows bent inward, and the red room collapsed into the wall, sealing itself shut as if it had never existed. Objects flew across the living room, crashing against the walls. A wave of blackness swept across the floor, darting past Kathy's feet. A tall, screaming silhouette spread across the wall, silent, distorted, terrifying. Blue flames shot up from the fireplace, twisting unnaturally. The basement door burst open, spilling thick, black fog. From the fog, a long, shadowed arm crawled forward, dragging itself toward them. George slammed the door, but it swung back open, resisting him like a living creature. The house roared, a deep, violent sound vibrating through every wall. Cracks spread across all the windows at once. Kathy clutched the front door handle, but something held it shut from the other side. George threw his shoulder into it, breaking it free. Cold night air rushed into the corridor, pulling them out of the suffocating darkness. They stumbled onto the porch as the house boomed behind them in fury. Dark figures appeared in the windows, watching, unmoving, as if the house itself had eyes. They ran to their car while the building felt eerily silent. Only one window glowed faintly, and then its curtain slid closed on its own.